Hey guys, Zen here, and I know it's been a while since you've heard my voice last, and the main reason for that is I've actually been playing a ton of Operation Grim Sky. Now, I know that may confuse some of you. Zen, what are you on about? Well, as you guys know, the big issue that was part of Operation Grim Sky's launch, and even before that with the test server, were all of the error codes, and at the time it made it almost impossible for me to get into any games and stay knowledgeable and informed about the game because I just couldn't get in and play any matches. But recently, Ubisoft fixed all these issues, and so I've really been taking the time to get familiar with the new meta, play Clash and Maverick, and there's just a ton to discuss. But there was one major thing that I kept noticing throughout this season and since I've been really able to play, and that's a lot of people talking about the automatic secondary nerf, the SMG 11, the SMG 12, and the bearing 9. And so I wanted to take this opportunity to give you guys my perspective and talk about the change as a whole, because as you guys know, I solo queue pretty much every single time that I play this game, and throughout all of the time that I do, I hear from a bunch of different people throughout the community. I hear from people that are happy about the change, I hear from people that really are upset about the change, and the whole thing as a dynamic is really interesting, so I wanted to talk about that. So I thought we'd talk about each operator that was affected by this change directly, and we would begin with Sledge. Now, as you guys know, Sledge has access to the SMG 11, and for the most part, it was always a part of his loadout. You would either have a Sledge that would have the L85 plus the SMG 11, or some Sledge mains out there do prefer the shotgun. It really gave you the best of both worlds. If you wanted to come in close and deal with an enemy that way, you had the shotgun, you had that close range option. But then if you wanted to deal with a defender that was holding angles or something like that, you had your SMG 11, and it was definitely reliable and super consistent. Now, with the nerf, Sledge as an operator really wasn't that impacted. He's still the best soft breaching operator to get through the map really quickly and relatively quietly. And again, he has some of the best weapons on attack. So I'd say in general, Sledge is still a really solid pick, and even though he doesn't have the best SMG with the SMG 11, he still has a pretty good pistol, and that L85 is still a really solid weapon to use. But now we could talk about Smoke, the headline operator, and really the inspiration for the reason why I wanted to actually make this video, and that's because I feel like Smoke was the operator that was impacted most by this change overall. We all know that Smoke has access to the SMG 11, and the main way that people would load him out is to equip his shotgun, to use it not only for attacking, but also to use it to get around the map and open up hatches and walls, that kind of thing. But we also equipped him with the SMG 11, and of course this was almost used as a primary for this operator. We all know at this point that the FMG 9 is pretty much one of the worst SMGs in the game. I know there are some die-hard fans out there, but in general it's not super accurate, and it really isn't that strong. It almost reminds me of Valkyrie's MPX. It's just one of the most lackluster aspects of Smoke. And so without that SMG 11, you're either forced to put away that shotgun and rely on his main SMG, or you deal with the shotgun and pull out your pistol. And at that point, you really have no answer for that mid-range engagement, and especially for that long-range engagement, unless you have masterful aim and crazy skill with pistols, which I know some of you guys out there really do. Now, I don't want to paint a bleak picture for Smoke. This is still definitely one of the most viable operators in this game, and he has an ability that is almost unmatched in the competitive realm. So in general, Smoke will always be an important operator, but with this nerf to the SMG 11, I've really suffered to play as him, and I haven't really been wanting to use him as much because again, I don't really have an answer at that long range, especially without that SMG 11. So for me, Smoke is seeing less playtime, but I'm really curious to know how you guys are impacted by this change. How much have you been playing with Smoke since his SMG 11 nerf? And if you are, what is your main loadout? Are you actually using the FMG 9 to success? Definitely let me know everything down below. But moving on, we have another operator, and honestly, this operator is probably second most affected by this change, and that's Dopey with the SMG 12. Now, everybody at this point can pretty much agree that the SMG 12 was ridiculously overpowered once it was released. I mean, it does have some significant recoil, but overall, it just had this recoil spread that allowed you to randomly get headshots almost every single time that you would take this thing out. And there was definitely a point in time where it was being overused heavily by both Dopey and Vigil. But in particular, when it comes to Dopey, I think she was impacted pretty heavily by this because, as we know, Dopey has no automatic options for primary. She has her DMR, which is really good and really foundational to that character, and she also has the Boss G, which if you have skills with that weapon, weapon, make no mistake, it can be an absolute beast. But a lot of people, I think, can agree that the SMG-12 kind of tied it all together for this operator, and it took a significant nerf, probably even more so than the Bearing 9 and the SMG-11. The SMG-12 took a serious nerf, and really it has an entirely different recoil pattern that I think it's going to take a lot of us a long time to master. Now, as far as specifically Dopey is concerned, I think that this operator is being affected by this change pretty heavily. I know for myself, I used to play Dopey almost every other attacking round, but I'm at the point where I'm really not picking her as often, and it's because her fragging capability was really brought down with this nerf to the SMG-12. Now, I know a lot of people enjoy the C75 automatic pistol, and from what I've played with it, it is definitely a really solid option, but of course the main drawback of that weapon is that it doesn't have access to any sights, and when you have an automatic weapon and it doesn't have any sights on it, it can make it really difficult to stay on target and be accurate, especially if you're trying to go for those headshots when you have the gun's barrel waving all in your face because of the recoil of the weapon. And so far from what I've played of it, the C75 is still a really solid secondary weapon, but in my opinion, before the nerf, it definitely doesn't compare to the SMG-12, but currently I do think it is the better secondary option for these operators. So again, if you're somebody who hasn't been playing a lot of Dopey, I recommend you switch over to the C75 because you just might find that you still have that automatic option and it is a viable weapon in that slot. So as far as Dopey is concerned, I will say that she has definitely not been played as much when I've been in these ranked lobbies, but I think over time, as we get used to that other secondary, she will be brought up because her gadget is really one of the best on attack right now and is somebody who I always value on my team. But real quick, we can talk about Vigil, the other operator with access to the SMG-12, and honestly, there really isn't much to say about him. He's still one of the best defenders in the game, he's still one of the best roamers in the game, and one of the biggest reasons for that is his main SMG, the K1A. It's just so strong and it has been since day one, so the nerf to his SMG-12 really didn't sting so bad, and of course you can always switch over to that C75 and you still have that complete package. He'll continue to be one of the best roamers in the game because he has those impact grenades, he has that 3 speed, and of course he has double automatic weapons so he can deal with multiple attackers in his general area. As far as in the ranked lobbies, I'm still seeing Vigil plenty and I don't think that that pick rate will be going down anytime. He is definitely a top fragger on defense, so in general, Vigil really hasn't been hurt too bad by this. Next up, we can talk about Hibana and her Bearing 9. Now, this was a weapon that actually surprised me with how heavily it was impacted by this change. Very similar to Sledge, Hibana was always paired with her Bearing 9, and really for no other reason than it was the better option. It was automatic, it had a really good recoil pattern, it was really easily mastered, had a decent clip, it's just a really solid secondary weapon. But now I'm almost exclusively using the pistol, and it's because really surprisingly, it's one of the best pistols in the game. It's got 50 damage, it's got 13 in the mag, so it's just really overall a versatile pistol and really strong in capable hands. So as far as Hibana is concerned, this is a great option for those of you guys that don't want to have to deal with the Bearing 9 in its current state. I highly recommend you switch over to the pistol, and I can almost guarantee you'll start enjoying Hibana a little bit more. Now, when it comes to this nerf and Hibana's overall popularity, this one is a difficult one to gauge because she is a hard breacher. For as long as there will be reinforced walls, you will need a Hibana. But throughout my time playing Operation Grimsky, I'm seeing Hibana pretty much as I always have, and I really don't think that that will ever change. Of course, she's a hard breacher, so she's fundamental to the game. She has 3 speeds, so she's able to get around really quickly, and she has a really strong assault rifle, one of the best in the game, so Hibana will probably always be meta and always be good. But there's no denying that with that nerf to the Bearing 9, you do lose just a little bit from her. Now, the final operator we must discuss is Echo, probably the laziest of all the operators here, and very similar to Vigil, there really isn't much to say about him and his overall nerf to the Bearing 9. Echo has a very passive ability, a very passive gadget, where you pretty much find a spot on the objective or you hide behind a deployable shield and you start using your yokai drone. Usually you're going to use yokai as a way to get that early intel on the attackers or to prevent some rushes, but then you're going to clean up those kills with your MP5. Really, the Bearing 9 doesn't come out with Echo unless it's a last ditch option or it's just something that you have to do, like you run out of ammo for your MP5 or you just have no other options. And in general, if you stuck with the Bearing 9 with Echo, you probably wouldn't even notice the changes because you probably don't use it much much with him. And if you do happen to use that secondary and you aren't a big fan of the changes, again, you can swap over to that pistol and you really won't be missing much with this particular operator. Echo has pretty much always been a niche operator, and I don't see this change really affecting that. And I also don't think that this change will affect his pick rate much at all, because Echo has really started to develop and become a really solid defender over time. But that's everything, guys. Those are all of the operators that have been affected by this automatic secondary nerf, and of course my perspective on it. But of course I want to hear from you. Are you using any of these operators less now that the changes to their secondaries have been changed? Or are you finding new loadouts and new ways to approach each one of these operators? Let me know everything in a comment down below. If you did enjoy this video, please drop a like and subscribe with notifications if you're new. With that being said, it's been Zen. Hey, I'm out.